Everyone. Welcome to Catch 22, the Somerville Chamber of Commerce series of conversations with local civic leaders. Thanks to our series sponsor, the Winter Hill Bank, without whom this would not be possible. Our format has been to introduce our guest, hear initial remarks, and then engage in a conversation with questions and answers. Moderating today's conversation will be the Chamber's Dining and Nightlife Group Chair, Jess Willis of the Independent Vera's Foundry and Saloon. Now, today's guest. Joe Lynch is the chairman of the Somerville Licensing Commission and is currently serving his second 3-year term on the commission. Joe is a United States Air Force veteran. Thank you for your service, Joe. He's worked for over 25 years in the banking industry. He's the former chair of the Somerville Ward 5 Democratic City Committee. He's the former president of the board of directors of the Somerville Media Center. He's the former chair of the Arts at the Armory Advisory Committee. A Somerville homeowner in his spare time, Joe produces, directs, and hosts the long-running local television talk show, Greater Somerville, and occasionally writes for local media. Now, Commissioner Joe Lynch.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and good afternoon, everyone. Additional marijuana dealers, other marijuana businesses, except for the medical establishments, and we are now responsible for all outdoor seating on the public way, including the temporary seating for special events. The Commission works with a wide range of city-side departments and most notably supported by the City Clerk's Office and have appointed liaisons with the Somerville Police Department and the Fire Department. Our mission is to vet and hear the applicants, allow the public to weigh in on those applications, develop the rules and regs for the licenses, hear complaints, conduct disciplinary hearings, and if needed, we levy sanctions and work with various city and state agencies that are responsible for conducting inspections. Our work has increased substantially in the short time I've been serving as chair to include all applications for recreational cannabis and for all outdoor dining participants in the city. We also are responsible for the enforcement and disciplinary actions for all of our licensees in conjunction with the Inspectional Services Division, the Somerville Police Department, the City Council, as well as the specific state agencies such as the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission, the Cannabis Control Commission, and the Attorney General's Office. The number of total licenses and amendments we issue in any given year has averaged in the vicinity of 500, and we anticipate that number to climb in the next couple of years. As chair, I work with all city departments, boards, the mayor's office, city council committees, individual city councilors, and I also work informally with other licensing commission chairs across the region on larger issues pertaining to our licensees. And perhaps equally as important, we work with individual businesses, Main Streets organizations, and wait for it, Stephen, the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce plays an integral role in how we work with the hospitality industry, and we can get into it a little bit more in the Q&A. What we try to do on the commission side is work on small and large issues to make our hospitality industry in this city a thriving and integral part of our economy. So before we move into the Q&A, you may be aware of what is taking place between some restaurant operators in Boston's North End and the city of Boston. Each licensing board or commission in Massachusetts municipalities operates according to state rules as well as their own city charter or legislative governance. Here in Somerville, we operate according to the city charter as well as the state law. I've been very fortunate during my tenure as chair on the commission that the former mayor and the current mayor have respected the quasi-judicial and independent nature of our commission. Yes, we occasionally consult with various city departments on policy, rules, and regs, but the city has demonstrated their hands-off approach with us when it comes to our rulings and decisions. During my tenure on the commission, we have not had one of our decisions appealed by an applicant, by the city, the ABCC, or the Cannabis Control Commission, nor by any entity associated with any of our decisions. I cannot comment on the potential lawsuit in Boston, but needless to say, the commissioners and I in Somerville take our role as an independent entity very seriously and will continue to operate as such. Stephen, that's what I've got for you. I love Q&As, so I'll be happy to answer any questions you or the members have.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner. I'd like to introduce Jess Willis, who's our Dining and Nightlife Chair, to moderate this section of the today's event. Jess?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you so much for being here today, Commissioner Lynch. It's nice to see everybody. So we all have the ability to mute and unmute ourselves, I think, on this call. So maybe just in order to avoid talking over one another, if folks want to just kind of raise a hand visibly, and I can shout people out, and you can just unmute yourself and ask your questions. Who would like to start?
Great.
Well,
Let's go to that.
I can start us off. I have a question about the hot topic that's on everyone's mind, the process for outdoor dining. A lot of restaurant operators have been reaching out to me over the past couple of weeks with a lot of questions about the process, and there is a ton of information online, which is great. But one thing I was wondering about is how the ABCC will be involved with the local authorities during the 2022 season in light of what's going on at the state level. If you could speak to us a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks, Jess. Good to see you again. As many of you know, especially the restaurateurs that are on here, during 2020 and 2021, the governor, under special orders, waived a lot of the requirements by the ABCC when it came to outdoor dining. They basically left it up to the local licensing authorities, meaning us on the commission, to work with the municipalities to allow outdoor dining on the public way. As many of you know, we've had applicants who have been operating on the sidewalks of Somerville for years. When it came to operating in non-contiguous spaces, meaning they were not directly in front of the establishment, Jess knows only too well. She owns one of those restaurants that had one of the only outdoor dining on the public way, meaning in the parking lot of Union Square. So there were only two. There was the independent and a much smaller organization who had something that was not contiguous. That ruling was waived during 2020 and 2021 in order to allow restaurateurs the expanded space they needed during 2020 and 2021. In late 2021, it was the will of a lot of legislators to see this program continue on a temporary basis. So the critical word here is temporary. 2020, 2021, we were operating under temporary rules. It was my discussion with other commissioners across the region. Specifically, I talked to Commissioner Joyce in Boston. I talked to Commissioner Ferrer in Cambridge, Commissioner Sullivan in Medford. There's an informal group, and we all made our phone calls behind the scenes to get our legislators to continue that during 2022 outdoor dining season. And we were all of the opinion that our hospitality industry suffered a gut-wrenching blow during 2020 and 2021, and that they were not out of the woods yet during 2022. So we pushed our individual legislators. I pushed Senator Jalen on the Senate side. Representative Barber, Representative Conley was getting it over in Cambridge. So we all pushed the legislature to move ahead with passing temporary legislation that would allow for the continuance of the temporary licensing for 2022. That was successful. That has passed both the Senate and the House. They will be allowing our programs to continue in 2022. We are now waiting. I'm still waiting. I know I've updated many of you for the governor to sign that executive order allowing it to take place. We have full faith and confidence. I've talked to Ralph Sacramone, the executive director of the ABCC. There is no holdup other than the governor's signature. So I feel comfortable at this point moving ahead with the temporary extension. That temporary extension gets rid of certain things like having to advertise the fact in the newspaper that you're moving to the outside, having public hearings where your neighbors can weigh in. We've also eliminated a lot of our fees on our side. We have control over the fees and the fines on the licensing. The ABCC will be waiving their fee. That's my understanding under the temporary rules. They may have certain things that they will charge you for. And hopefully when we get the advisory from the ABCC, that will be made very clear. But on the licensing side, many of you participated in the hearing that we conducted at the licensing side, and we waived our fees. We also asked for more time on the street. As you know, we can regulate the opening date, the closing date, the hours of operation, and the fees. So it was my intent, talking to the administration. Some of you remember when you came back in, there was a proposal by the administration to charge $100 a seat. That did not go over well with me, knowing that I know a lot of my licensees are not out of the financial woods. So I pushed back and said to the administration, no, that's not going to fly. I don't think that's a good idea. And they eventually came back and waived all the fees associated with the licensing for 2022. So what we anticipate from the ABCC is the relaxing of a lot of their rules. Some of you have been on the calls, the regular licensing commission calls. There is one area where I am not as lenient as I have been in the past couple of years, and neither are the other two commissioners, that when it comes to ADA requirements, to make all of our residents feel welcome at your outdoor establishments, those have become much more strict this year than they have been in the past two. Partially because in the past 2 years, the city of Somerville received a waiver from the Architectural Review Board for certain things that we were doing when it came to ADA. That waiver expired on December 31st of 2021, and the city of Somerville has not reapplied for that. So there are stricter requirements when it comes to ADA. There are requirements now for plans to be submitted rather than on the back of an envelope. The engineering team is looking for specific things for the outdoors on the public way. They're looking for ADA compliance. They're looking for safety. They're looking for health type of environments. As you know, some of the outdoor dining across the city last year covered sewers and drains and manholes and electrical conduits. We have to be extremely, extremely careful with this year's plan. Even though we are abiding by some of the temporary rules, we're laying the groundwork, Jess, for next year, that we cannot expect the legislature nor whoever is the next governor to allow temporary to continue forever. So the agreement between folks in ISD and engineering and economic development and myself is that we are rolling out parallel programs this year. The more permanent that will take place next year and the extension of the temporary this year. Does that answer most of what you asked me, or was that too much?
It does. No, thank you for your response. So just one quick follow-up, and then I see Dave Middleton has a question as well. But if a restaurant this summer wants to get going, as quickly as possible, as I imagine many do, it sounds like what you're saying is that they will have the ability to do that under the temporary authorization. But simultaneously, that same restaurant could be working on a more permanent approval that would go through all the regular channels, including the ABCC approval, and plan to have that in place by 2023 potentially. Okay, that's
correct.
great. That's great. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Dave Middleton.
Unfortunately, I think Joe kind of answered my question as he answered your last question, Jess. It was a little premature maybe to put up my hand, but just to reiterate, so I like Jess, I've had tenants reach out in the last couple of weeks just in preparation for the outdoor seating season, and one of the applicants that recently submitted something to the licensing board got an email back saying that they needed a site plan that was certified by a design professional. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? Like, is that a certified architect that needs a stamped plan for these temporary extended patios, or what's the expectation, just so I can let some of these tenants know?
So David, you and I have spoken about the intricacies of Assembly Row area. There are certain parts of Assembly Road that may appear to be a public way, but they are actually owned by Federal Realty. So it gets into the intricacy of whether or not who's reviewing that application understands, is it public property or is it private property that the applicant is applying for? The rules will be the same, public and private. You have to adhere to certain things that the engineering folks are asking for. The last discussion I had with Director Postlethwaite from engineering indicates that if the applicant had plans that they submitted over the past 2 years and were approved, and that they are not changing in any significant way, engineering will work with them so that they waive the requirement for certified stamped plans. I don't want to speak for engineering at this point, but it may have been, can you tell me the date of when they got that response from the city?
It was very recent, I think. Monday night is when I got an email from this applicant saying that's, so I'm assuming on Monday is when they heard back from the clerk.
Okay. What I can do is you can email me offline, Dave, and find out the specifics of why they received that kind of a response.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, our folks in engineering, our folks in IS, as you know, engineering is going to be reviewing the plans. They'll make any comments about it, try to get back to the applicant, let them know what's needed. And then it moves very quickly through the system once the plans are approved. My last conversation with Kim Wells, the city clerk, is that we already have about 12 to 15 applications that have already come in, and they're well on their way through the system to get approved. I made the commitment to the administration that I'm not going to be the clog in the drain this year, that if they need the licensing commission to meet multiple times to approve these licenses, amendments, whatever they want to call them, I'll meet up to 3 times a week to try to get them through quickly.
That's terrific. Do you have a sense from the other departments within the city who will be involved in the approval process of just kind of rough estimate how long a business should expect the approval process to take?
Thanks, Jess. That's going to be predicated on how many times they ask us to meet on the licensing side. So as the application weaves its way through, the city clerk, the engineering and the IS and economic development folks are watching how many are there. I think Stephen knows at one of my meetings, I said, look, I'm not going to hold it up. I'm the one that set the date for April 1st for the launch date. If folks are ready on April 1st, if they want us to meet on March 31st to approve these, we'll do it. So as the applications are coming in, I don't want to say they're being bundled, but if we've got 10, 15 applications, we'll meet, we'll get them approved, and we'll get them through.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any other hands up? Anybody have any questions, comments?
Mr. Mackey does.
Jessica, Mr. Mackey does, and Jessica Eshleman. Let's go to Jessica first.
Thank you very much to Stephen and the Chamber for hosting, Jess for moderating, and of course the Commissioner for being with us. I had two topics. One is very particular, nitty-gritty and granular for the application process, or requirements, I should say. And the second is a bit more global, citywide, but does relate to outdoor dining. So the first is, there is some uncertainty around Union Square businesses who in previous years have been able to submit applications. I'll actually just back up one step and share with all on the call to make sure that we're aware the city is also taking a closer look at the number of seats in your license in comparison to your toilet capacity. And that was an area where there was more flexibility during our temporary emergency measures, and that we have been educated not to expect that going forward. Commissioner, I'm curious if you've been able to get clarification on the question that several of the businesses in Union Square are asking me, which is in the before times, before there's was the pandemic and we were under temporary measures, a business who had outdoor dining did need to adhere to a toilet capacity, but they could offset those numbers by removing a seat from the inside if they sat somebody on the outside. And so it enabled small businesses, in places like Union Square, we have a lot of old buildings with dense spaces, and there's just one bathroom facility for the whole restaurant. And so there's a few restaurants I'm thinking about, they would see 4 people outside and they would just remove from their host desk those 4 seats from the inside. Could you clarify if that will be continued?
That's a long preface, and I have a very short answer. Yes.
Wonderful.
So under the temporary rules, you are allowed to juggle your occupancy inside and outside. So you have an occupancy permit for, for safety's sake, let me just make some numbers up here. You have an occupancy inside of 40 seats. What that dictates is how many bathrooms you have to have, how many toilets you have to have, or fixtures. Let's call them fixtures. And that's on your master license to operate. Once you move outside, you cannot increase the capacity without increasing your fixtures, but you are allowed to decrease the inside, move them outside, and thereby still be in compliance with the number of fixtures that you need. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. The second topic, and sorry it's taken me a minute to figure out how to lower my hand, but I will figure that out right after I ask this question, is the city is piloting new rodent mitigation efforts. And I understand that there are 4 sites that are being piloted currently. And since the topic of this is outdoor dining and it is a citywide focus, I wanted to ask the commissioner, but also sort of plant the seed with attendees today. Are there ways that you think that we could be supporting more targeted pilot sites in areas that have concentrations of outdoor dining? We know that there's just an inherent challenge when you have clusters of restaurants and dumpsters and outdoor dining. And as far as I'm aware, there's only one of those pilot locations near a cluster of outdoor dining in one of our city's squares. And I was eager for your thoughts about asking the city to focus more of those pilots in these areas.
Thanks, Jessica. Without knowing the particulars of how they fashioned that program and how they're targeting where these new devices are being located, what I can only say to you is I will put it forth to them that the more outdoor dining, concentration of outdoor dining, the more likelihood that you will have a rodent problem. So why not focus those? Now, remember, Jessica, we're at, citywide, they're getting requests right across the city, not just from the commercial districts, but from neighborhoods that may have a lot of construction going on. And the construction has disturbed the underground boroughs. And those boroughs are adding to rodent problems in the residential areas. My feeling is you can't just say, we're going to get 30 traps and place them across the city and expect a good result. You may have to get 100 traps, and you may have to put some in the commercial districts that will have outdoor dining, a concentration of outdoor dining. So very well taken point. I mean, I'll put it out there in front of engineering and public health and whoever has control of it, that as our restaurants go back out into the streets this year, you've got to increase the capacity for rodent control.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's go to Stephen.
And thank you, Jess, and thank you, Commissioner. I think I'm going to ask a question about competition. Boston, Cambridge, Somerville are the urban core. Dining and nightlife, very important to all three. We have diverse local economies. Somerville's a little different in that dining and nightlife over the last 20 years basically was a magnet for Greater Boston and the world. Dining and nightlife is arguably the keystone industry in our ecosystem, our economic ecosystem. If dining and nightlife goes away, so do a lot of other things about loving to live, work, and play in Somerville. So it's really important in all kinds of multiplier effects that it has in the community, not just employment and jobs, jobs and taxes and so forth. So one of the things, respecting, of course, the intricate federal and state laws, Commissioner, that you and the commission and the city have to operate under, respecting all of that, and also understanding that they don't act promptly necessarily. Obviously, given the situation, we're still waiting the governor's signature. But it is coming up to April 1st, and April 1st is globally accepted around here is the beginning of the spring season. And the spring season is critical in terms of income and surviving for these restaurants. If you lose a day in spring of 2022, you're never going to get back. So what the chamber is concerned about right now is that how are we going to be first of all, out of the block, how soon can a restaurant be up relative to April 1st? Number one. And number two is, do we have any sense as to where we're going to be versus Boston and Cambridge? We all see dominating the news right now the particular issues between, I think, the mayor of Boston and the North End. But they're famous, but they're a small part. There's the rest of Boston and Cambridge that we compete with. from a competitive standpoint, can you comment on Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville relative to April 1st? Thank you.
Sure. So the city clerk's office is ready. They are already accepting applications. The licensing commission will meet in order to approve those applications. And I think your fear is well-founded, not because of the failure of any one department across the city, but because it is a new initiative that is operating under temporary rules. We are also trying to lay the groundwork for next year. Because as I said previously, Stephen, those temporary rules are not going to last forever. So what we're trying to do is to be fair, to be equitable right across the board. What you're seeing now in Boston is, and these are my words, nobody else's, is a territorial dispute between certain sections of that city. What I can say from Somerville's standpoint is the reason we are probably better positioned to launch on April 1st without the kind of controversy that you see in Boston. Cambridge is also, I hear rumblings in Cambridge because private entities were allowed to open prior to April 1st. Our decisions last year to allow the private dining establishments to continue right through the winter, if they wanted to, was a decision made by the licensing commission, and it was supported by the administration. So there are some dining establishments on private property, particularly, let's take a look at Bow Market. Bow Market was allowed to operate their outdoor dining and outdoor seating right through the winter, and they adapted to it. They had fire pits that were approved by the fire department. They had heating lamps. They had all their businesses, you know, with gloves on and winter hats. I mean, they adapted to what was allowed for them. Any of you who've been operating a business in Somerville knows that in prior years, public and private patios shut down on a specific date. That was it. It was over with for, you know, X number of months during the winter. Our commission allowed it to take place. Go right through the winter. If you have private dining and you're going to make your patrons comfortable, do it. The public side of things is much more complex. It is much more, not just me as chair or the other two commissioners agreeing with me. It is the wide range of how a city operates. So you've got road repair, you have infrastructure things happening underground, you have rodent control, you have construction happening. I can say it because I was just there this weekend. Jess Willis, unfortunately, may not have outdoor dining on Elm Street for Foundry on Elm because there is now construction going on in a facility next door to her, and they have a massive 18-foot dumpster in the place of where she had her outdoor dining last year. So those are the complexities of living in a small city. Cambridge has a different method of how they approve. Their three commissioners are made up of a full-time commissioner, the head of DPW, and the head of the fire department. So they don't get a whole lot more flexibility than we have in the city. I think we have a lot more flexibility. Their Starlight Lounge, or Starlight, somebody help me with the name of that, the Starlight thing that they have operating on a parking lot over there, that is now in jeopardy. That may not continue through 2022. So all of the temporary measures that we did, I always had my eye to the future, because I said to many of you, once this horse is out of the barn, we're not going to be able to put it back in. Outdoor dining on the public way is here to stay. And I'm not talking about just on the sidewalks. I'm talking about in the streets. The complexity of that is, and I don't have to tell anyone this, but it bears repeating. Everyone in this city, from residents to businesses to government entity to travelers coming through to our visitors. Everyone is fighting for space on our public ways, our sidewalks, our streets, the bicycle community are fighting for bike lanes, our public transportation folks are fighting for good public transportation, private entities, such as a private vehicle owner. I mean, Davis Square, Union Square, and to a degree, Assembly. And we're going to have it in Union. We're going to have it in Boynton. Everyone is fighting for space these days. The introduction of outdoor dining on the public way has put another source of fighting for space on the public way. I think we can design a program that's fair, that's equitable, but I also am very cognizant that we're going to have a program that is not going to make everyone happy at all. I'm not an idealist that way. It's not going to be perfect. What it does afford this year, let me concentrate on 2022, it allows us to continue a program that I was very happy with over the last couple of years. I sense frustration from all of you, and I think you sense my frustration when I have private conversations, that the system that we designed was a quick build in response to an emergency. We designed the system as best we could. We had multiple meetings to try to get everybody up and running by a certain date in 2020. We allowed it to continue again in 2021. I fought, and the commissioners fought, to allow it to continue again in 2022. We are now in the phase of, we're testing it. That's the way I kind of look at this thing. We're testing it again for the final product to be rolled out in 2023. I just ask for cooperation because on my side, I've got engineering, DPW, fire, police, emergency services, the city councilors. I've got to juggle all of their wants and desires and needs. So when the DPW commissioner says to me, I want it shut down on November 1st because there might be a snowstorm, I don't grab onto that. I say, you ever hear of this thing called global warming? We're staying warmer during November. So I pushed to have our program continue to the end of November. So there's some cultural change that's going on here too. People fighting for parking spaces in Davis Square. Our ADA community has to be considered in every step we take. Our construction schedules for brand new construction in Davis Square, I can't predict what that's going to do. We also have another restaurateur that's on the call, Conor Brennan. Conor had very successful outdoor dining up in the Teal Square area, but now Conor's faced with the fact that at some point Holland Street is going to be repaved. And what that entails for him is he could go out early enough this spring, but then at some point the city's going to come back and say, take it up, Conor, because we've got to repave the street. All of those things I'm trying to juggle behind the scenes. And it's going to come down to priorities. I work well with the administration, but sometimes I get extremely frustrated that it appears as though different departments are not communicating with each other and don't understand how important outdoor dining on the public way is to your industry. I understand it. This kid was washing dishes at Joe Tecchi's in the North End when I was 12 years old. I was waiting tables in between the military and my banking career for 3 summers in a resort. I get it. The only thing they would never let me near is food preparation because I'm not a good cook. So I hope that answers some of the question about continuing the program, where we are today, what I need from your industry in terms of support. I've always gotten great support from Jess, from Stephen, from many of the restaurateurs that are on the call. The Main Streets organizations over the past couple of years have been extremely valuable for input as to what was happening on the ground, what was happening in East Somerville, what was happening in Union Square. I'm not going to blow smoke today and tell you everything is going to be beautiful. It's going to be unicorns and rainbows. It's not. But I'm very proud of the fact that the commission took a standpoint of whatever we do, we're going to do it in a fair and equitable way. I said I wasn't going to comment on what's happening in Boston. But let me put it this way. If I had said to Union Square businesses, you're going to get whacked with $7,500, and nobody in Assembly Row will get whacked with that same fee, I am sure that the Union Square businesses would have reacted very negatively to that.
That sounds fair to me.
Spoken like a true Assembly Row manager.
We'll need to speak about that, please.
All good fun.
What else have we got out there, Stephen or Jess?
Could I add just one follow-up to what I just heard, Jess? Would that be okay? You know, I hear about, I think you're right, we're the densest city in New England. You're right to remind us all about the competition for space and remind us that it's across cyclists, it's across businesses. And I think often when the community thinks about outdoor dining, it's easy to say, yes, this is good for the small locally owned business in many cases. And that's really important to our city's values. But I'd like to go I'd like to go one step further. It's not just good for the local business owner and the people that they're employing, as you indicated in your own history, but that as Somerville is has high values of like pedestrian oriented business districts, that outdoor seating actually is a benefit to vibrancy in the community as a whole. It's more than just the bank account in that particular business, but it's what kind of vibe is happening when you make your way through a place like Union or Davis or elsewhere, and that people attract people, and that it is very in line with our goals that you see in Summer Vision and the Union Square Neighborhood Plan, to have these squares that are more centralized around people in the community, making possible more of the bump factor that Mayor Curtatone spoke about so often. And I just want to make sure that that point isn't lost, because this isn't just about, again, the revenue line for one business. It really is about a quality of life for us all who share that space.
Couldn't agree with you more, Jess. Couldn't agree with you more. And let me make a couple of statements following up on that, is that in order for us to have a product, and forgive me if I look at the hospitality industry as a product, it is a product that the city has, and all of you who own a business within that product should be proud that, you know, people want to come here. They want to come. We have James Beard nominees coming out of the city of Somerville. Shelton, who would have thought, right? Yeah, right. So we have a lot to be proud of with the hospitality industry. We have hotels coming into Somerville. Who thought beyond Holiday Inn we would see the Row Hotel, we would see Cambria coming online sometime this summer. We would see all of this investment that the outside wants to make in our city. What I'm trying to get across to the administration is we have to invest in that draw. We are a draw. The hospitality industry is a draw to bring people in. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole balance. How do we balance affordability with keeping our businesses thriving? That's another discussion. But what I want to make everyone understand is that my role is to deliver a product that is easy, as inexpensive as we can make it for our small businesses. I know that, you know, people say, well, why don't you charge the richer ones more? That's never been my style. It's not my style. You know, I have a product to deliver. I don't differentiate between what's in your pocketbook. What other consumer business do you know does that, right? If you walk into a store and you look at a product, that's the price. They don't ask you how much you got in the bank and say, how much you got in the bank? You're going to pay 50% premium. What I'm trying to deliver is something that's fair and equitable, something that's affordable by our small and big businesses alike in the hospitality industry. I want to make this a shining example of how we can do it right. and avoid lawsuits. I want people when they enter the city to think, wow, look at that outdoor dining, the way it presents itself to the casual observer. I don't want to see any more cones. I don't want to see empty barrels. I don't want to see any of that stuff. I want these to be designed so that we look at them and go, this is inviting. This is what we need. And it's going to be an expense for some of our restaurateurs, but that's where my fight is behind the scenes. You know, $10,000 for each applicant who comes in and gets certified stamp plans or has to buy new barriers. I mean, that was something that I asked for out of the administration. I said, I'm not going to charge them an arm and a leg. They still need help. So they came up with the 10,000 per applicant. I'm going to extend their hours, and I'm going to extend the time that they're going to be on the street. If anybody has any serious objections to that, let me know now, because those are the things I can control. And the administration came back and said, basically, if it blows up, it's going to blow up in your face. So no lawsuits that I can see. But, you know, when we look at this, I look at it, I'm not a world traveler, but I travel a lot. And I see how other municipalities have done their outdoor dining. I see how inviting it looks. I see how classy it looks. And I see the profitability of those entities that spent the time and spent the money investing in it. Sorry, that's what I got. Mr. Shelton, are you gonna close us out?
I don't know, but I did want to follow up on your last brilliant insight along with Jessica Eshleman's. Those of you who know me know that for the last 35 years, I've been annoying people around here saying that we need to, that if we want to pay for what we say we want, we need a whole lot more commercial development. And 35 years ago, the way that large enterprises decided where they wanted to locate was mostly, where does the CEO want to live near? And now it's mostly, where does the talent want to work near? And the enterprises that we're discussing right now, more than any other in Somerville, are what contribute to why now we are finally getting the stampede of office and lab uses.
No, it's a great point, Bill. I mean, I always joked with the former mayor, don't make our city too sexy because everyone will want to be here. You know, my only comment, and it's a benign comment, when people say gentrification is taking over Somerville, I just question it and I say, where have you been for the past 15 years? You know, it's not taking over, it has taken it over. So my focus with the licensing commission is to make sure that you all have the competitive edge. I think we can blow Cambridge and Boston out of the water, although Boston has a much more, it's a wider geographical draw. You know, I don't go to a lot of chain restaurants these days. I like to support my local restaurants. And even when I travel, I try to support local restaurants. I find the little mom and pop that's off on the side of the road with a picnic bench and the best fried clams in New Harbor, Maine. So, Stephen, before you go, I want to just make it clear, you know, many of the restaurateurs do have my cell phone number, and I don't get annoyed when they call. But I try never to give them conflicting information as to what's coming out of the administration. So I have to rely a lot on our city clerks. And if you just, if you allow me to give a plug, our city clerk's office, Lori Batzik, who is my clerk, the commission's clerk, Bernabe Rodriguez, who is on the call today. Bernabe, I'm not doing this because you're on the call. And I think I saw Kim Wells on the call as well. The city clerk's office, as you know, handles an enormous amount of requests. an enormous amount of paperwork and licensing and applications. They not only handle all of my work, they handle all of the city clerks, all of the city council's work on the city council. They do handle some of the school committee, but I want to give a shout out to those folks in the city clerk's office who make my job easier. So thank you, Stephen. We got a few more minutes if you want me to keep going.
Thank you, Commissioner. I see that we have two hands up. If we can make it quick, we're coming up on the hour. Ben, do you have an announcement? I'm gonna go right to Connor and then I'll come back to you, Ben.
Just quick, just to say, from my perspective, Commissioner, you've run a great shop through probably the hardest 2 years in anyone's imagination. And I just want to say thank you very much for your work and your leadership. And as I've said to you, and I think I've said in multiple Zooms, that our industry will make things work. And we've shown that. And we appreciate the hard work that you and your clerks and everyone is doing. And we understand that it's hard work. But I just want to say thank you very much for everything you've done.
Connor, thank you. I'll pass it on to the city clerk's office and to the other folks who make this work. Thank you.
Ben, do you have an announcement?
Yes, first of all, Commissioner, I want to thank you and the rest of the board. I'm on the other side of the alcohol retail. I represent Save More Spirits. We've recently moved into Assembly Row and inviting everybody there. This is our grand opening weekend. There'll be some prizes, some things and whatever. And Commissioner, I know you've been invited and I hope you can stop by sometime. We're starting on the 1st of April, Friday at 4 o'clock. The mayor should be there to kick things off. And just speaking as a retailer who has been in Somerville incredibly 40 years, I've always felt that the Somerville board has been one that listens to us, may not always agree with us, but the important thing is that they listen to the retailers. And when there are questions that are involving the way we make a living and the products that we do sell, we always appreciate being able to be heard and present our case to the commission as the landscape changes. And boy, has it been changing. And anyway, I just wanted to thank you again and invite everybody to stop by. Should be some fun, and thank you all.
Thank you, Ben.
Ben, what's your new address in Assembly Row?
325 Canal Street. We're right next to CVS on Grand Union Boulevard. So we're right next door and hope to see everybody there.
Will there be a billboard in Assembly Row?
That's what the mayor's unveiling. That's part of our
Fantastic.
plan.
Can't
My
wait.
nephew- Oh, speaking of which, we're actually on Chronicle tomorrow night for a blurb at 7:30. We're going to be on Chronicle. My nephew, you get to see the man behind the sign.
Awesome.
I love those signs.
I just, if I could, Jess, I just want to say thank you very much to Commissioner Lynch. I said thank you to him for his service in the Air Force. I'd also say and point out we're lucky that he came back to Somerville and got involved in community service and public service. Thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership in those areas. We're happy to be working with you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you all very, very much for everything we do. See you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.